Blair here. I'm so excited to see you this morning. It's been a bit of a heavy week, maybe a scary week, maybe a very anxious week. Maybe you're even a little bit angry. There's a lot of emotions we've felt this week. And I just wanted to check in with you this morning and remind you of how much you are loved and how much we are all here to hopefully keep each other safe. And I also was reminded about our series we did this summer, the one with our Rabble Rouser series. And I remember whenever we talked about Mr. Rogers, he reminded us to always look for the helpers. And so that's what I encourage you to do whenever things are tough this week. As you watch the news with your parents, or maybe even as you have conversations about it with your friends, if you are, then maybe you can think about looking for the helpers. So just a fun reminder, just something that is kind of like a little virtual hug, I think. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. The second thing I wanted to tell you about is our exciting new mini-series we're starting in Greenhouse this week. So we're switching it up. We're leaving Sunday mornings for just a little while, and we are going to do Goodnight Greenhouse on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. So if you need a reminder, the link will be in the comments and it'll go straight to your Google Calendar so you never, ever, ever forget. But we can't wait to, at 7 o'clock on Tuesday nights, be the ones that help tuck you in at night. So join us. We're so excited. We're going to do lots of fun genres. If you have any book ideas, let me know. Miss Blair's doing this week, and I'm still trying to decide between all my books. So if you have something you want me to read, feel free to share. I can't wait. I love you all so much, and I hope that you feel that love this morning. See you Tuesday night.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Watershed's virtual gathering. We wish we could be in person with you, but we especially know right now more than ever it's important that we continue to meet with you via a screen. So as you are getting comfortable and inviting friends to maybe log on, you can share our live stream on your Facebook page, and then everybody that knows you could also join in, which we would love for you to do. And we also invite you to let us know where you're watching from this morning, what part of town, or maybe you're not here in Charlotte this morning. Just love interacting with you that way. And as you get a cup of coffee and get comfortable, we knew that this was a week that we really needed to be together more than ever. And so in the preparation for that, we've really tried to create moments that will be feeding for your soul. So we're glad you're here. And we're thankful for you.
Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia, Georgia, a song of you comes as sweet and clear as moonlight through the pine. Other arms reach out to me, other eyes smile tenderly, still and peaceful dreams I see, the road leads back to you. Whoa,
Georgia, Georgia, no peace do I find, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia
Just in no sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Just in no sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. My mind.
Good morning. And if you haven't had a chance to settle in before that, I just feel sorry for you. But hey, give you a few more minutes just to log in, let everybody else know that you're here, where you're from, who you're with, all those good things. This time that we get to gather together virtually really cannot be taken for granted, especially after the kind of week that we've had. Just with everything that has gone on, that in a lot of ways, we don't even need to give a recap or a review of it because it's still sitting very heavy with us. And many of you who know me know I've never been one hesitant to speak on these things. And so when there is an opportunity to give a Black perspective on the events of this Wednesday, I quickly raised my virtual hand and said I'd be willing to share. And I'm here today to share that with you as well. I never wanted things to come to this. I take no pleasure in what I'm about to say, but I believe that I speak on behalf of millions of Black Americans when I say, we've been told, y'all. We told you that a day like the day that insurrectionists laid siege to the U.S. Capitol building would come. We didn't know when. We didn't know how. Our magic does not go that deep because it's not magic at all. We knew. We knew because we have spent a lifetime listening to our elders. We knew because we know the stories of our ancestors. We knew because despite being called liars, deceivers, and my favorite, the real racists, we committed ourselves to knowing and reciting the full history of race in America. We are well versed in and unafraid to tell the whole story, to proclaim the full counsel of whiteness. How whiteness doesn't simply play by a different set of rules. No, it makes the rules. Ta-Nehisi Coates tried to tell y'all when he declared that Donald Trump was the first white president. Nicole Hannah-Jones tried to tell y'all when she told you that the beginning of this experiment called America was not 1776, but rather 1619. And Colin Kaepernick tried to warn y'all when he took a knee during the anthem. Colin was told to shut up and sit down, as though this subservient posture of kneeling was the greatest possible offense to the anthem, the flag, the law enforcement, the armed forces, as though no Black bodies ever shed their blood in uniform for this country, and everything that America thinks that it represents. Black people tried to tell y'all it was the reopened protesters temporarily taking over the state building in my native Michigan. Y'all didn't hear us, though. The image that stands out the most from the first breach of the U.S. Capitol building since 1814 was a clip of one of the insurgents, the ones who think of themselves as the true Americans, using a pole bearing the stars and stripes as a jousting spear to push through a wall of law enforcement. Apparently, blue lives didn't matter at that particular moment. Black people are often found in contempt for not honoring and obeying democracy, but the true patriots can use the flag as a tool to carry out treason. There is so much that can be said about the insurrection, but none of it is new. Nothing can be said that hasn't been said already. Black people told y'all Trump's rhetoric is dangerous. We told y'all he would embolden white supremacists. We even told y'all that aligning your evangelical churches with a demagogue would hurt your witness, if not put the final nail in the coffin of Christendom. We have been so invested in telling y'all that we can recite many of your replies, your whataboutisms, and your both sides diatribes for you before you. To see so-called patriots and true Americans literally break into the halls of our nation's legislature was a reminder of what Malcolm X told y'all nearly 60 years ago. The chickens have come home to roost. The chickens of white supremacy, conspiracy theories, and myths have come home to roost in the form of insurgency in the U.S. Capitol building. Now, Black people are sitting back and waiting to see which of y'all will do right or which of y'all will continue to rally around what's white. For those of you that don't know, my name is Cedric Lundy, and I'm a teaching pastor on staff here at Watershed. My connection to Watershed goes all the way back to going to the church during undergrad that I attended that the Hofords were at before they moved to Charlotte to plant Watershed with the O'Neills. And I have been invited to share what's saving me right now. An inordinate amount of trips to Middle Earth, Hogwarts, and a galaxy far, far away this year. Because sometimes I need evil to be as easy as taking the ring to Mordor or finding Horcruxes and reminders that there is always hope. That's what's saving me. Friday pizza and movie nights with my wife and daughter is saving me. Recognizing the only reason I hadn't unfriended some folks who had been toxic, gaslighting, bad faith actors for years was my pride in being able to claim I hadn't unfriended anyone. And that is not a good enough reason to keep them around. That I was no longer going to negotiate my dignity with those folks. And letting them know I am not your Negro is saving me. Watching my wife's eyes roll to the back of her head and her smack her lips with a yum, 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 yum after tasting my latest culinary endeavor. Sourdough bread, spatchcock chicken, pasta made from scratch, and spring lamb with rhubarb butter. Y'all, I don't even like rhubarb, but that rhubarb butter, yo, that was fire. You got to try it. I can send you the recipe. Every coffee with a friend I managed to get this past year, you know who you are, is saving me. Every hug I was able to give since the pandemic began is saving me. My work and community at Urban Promise is saving me. That after 40 plus years as the black face in a white space, that I get to do work in a predominantly black space and be able to bring my gift set and my skills to a bunch of young kids in the community. That I have this fabulous team of mostly brown and black kids that I get to see their tenacious energy, creativity, ingenuity, that despite the things that they face in life, they show up every day for the kids in their community because they believe that they can be great too. That is saving me. The seniors in Urban Promise at the Camp Freedom site that I get to work with, the fact that they have gotten nearly 40 college acceptances is saving me. The fact that our 4 seniors from last year have finished their first semester of college, many of whom are the first person in their family to go to college or university, is saving me. The genuine friendships I have formed this past year with folks I've yet to meet face to face is saving me. And that a year of not being able to go to church has revealed I'm not dependent on church to have Christ-centered community. And now, we'd like to give you the space and time to reflect for a few minutes on what's saving you right now. Thank you.
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. Oh, who are broken, lift up your face. Wanderer, come home, you're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are, come as you are. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. Oh, who are broken, So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. A wanderer come, oh, you're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are, come as you are, come as you are, come as you are.
Wow, I wish you could be in the room right now. Just the energy and the beauty of this music, and we just need you out here like it used to be, and we long for that and have hopes and anticipation that here in the months in this part sometime this year that we will be able to share in this space physically again. But in the meantime, thank you for showing up with us digitally, and thank you for allowing us to come into your homes and into your lives this morning. This has been a crazy week. It feels like every Sunday we talk about another crazy week, and it continues to outdo itself week after week. And so for so many of us, we sit with this and have this luxury of being able to have really good conversation around really some painful narratives. And so hopefully this morning, this is maybe a salve over your soul. Maybe this morning this is a reminder that there are people out there that really do care and really do love, and that we have this connection with a God that deeply cares and deeply loves his creation. So thank you for being with us this morning. And in terms of maybe what it means to experience health and connection here at Watershed these days, we get to do it through these ways of being online digitally. And so I think of like book clubs, for example, something that pre-COVID we really didn't know could have the kind of legs that they have in terms of people really connecting and really spending time together. And so we have a couple of those that will be happening for you in terms of if you're saying, I really want to connect with other people. And so we have some of those that are happening. We have two in particular, the Butterfly Net Book Club and Black Madonna. Both of those have been really powerful and really meaningful, and there's a link there you can click on if you want to jump in and join us in being part of those. We also have, Matt told me today that we have a handful of small groups, our blocks, our micro-communities, that have been distancing and gathering in very appropriate ways, maybe in a backyard, around a campfire, or just on Zoom calls. And they're saying that they might have a little bit of space in terms of being able to add additional folks. So if you're looking for other people to connect with, maybe weekly or every other week, and you're saying, I'd love to be able to connect with some other people here at Watershed. If you would, there should be a link that you can sign up to be a part of one of our other current blocks, or you can also email matt@watershedcharlotte.com, and we'd love to connect you with that. Tonight at 7 o'clock, we have a student hangout, so if you have a middle schooler or a high schooler and are interested in being a part of that experience, my youngest son in particular jumps in most Sunday nights, and I hear him laughing in the other room. I hear the hollering and the screaming and the yelling as they're playing these games, and as David's just doing a great job of engaging them in terms of moments of fun and then moments of really good conversation. So if you're interested and you have a middle schooler and high schooler, we'd love to have you be a part of that. We also have this experience called Preface, and it's sort of a introductory to who Watershed is. And so for many of you, you've only known us in the digital space, and you've not been able to join us physically or on a Sunday. And we've done this a couple other times so far. But if you're interested in being a part of what's next for me here in this community, how do I connect with other people like myself who are relatively new, who are asking really good questions, and are trying to figure out how to connect before you maybe jump into a block or a book club or whatever it might be. And so we have this experience called Preface, and Matt and I have this privilege of being able to host that with you. And again, this will be our third one that we've done during COVID, and really enjoyed the conversations and the connections that have happened in that. So if you're interested in being a part of the next preface that begins, it's the first Tuesday of February, please, if you would, sign up, and would love to have you join us on that. We get a really nice response to that, and that has been really exciting because we're able to meet some new folks and connect and make those really neat connections. So thanks for being a part of that. You heard early on in the introduction, Blair talked about the Goodnight Greenhouse experience, and we will be having our greenhouse teachers and facilitators and our watershed folks actually be reading age-appropriate stories to your kids at night. And I leaned over to my son earlier, Colson, who's right here, and I said, man, I would have loved something like this when you were younger, because we had a kind of a reading routine every night. So to introduce other watershed influencers, we would love to have you be a part of that. And that happens here, I believe, shortly in the next week or so. And then lastly, we've just come off a holiday season with Christmas and New Year's, and the month of November and December, we were able to do a lot of good in our city. We came off of a summer where we were able to address some really powerful conversations regarding Black Lives Matter and interviews. And like the work of 2020, while it's been a really difficult year and we're kind of excited that it's gone, it's also been of huge consequence. And we never would have imagined what last year would have held had we not gone through that, of course. And so having no idea what 2021 is going to look like, but what we do know is that we are continuing to operate, we're going to continue to do good work, we're going to continue to ask really hard questions, and do our best to be in the trenches with not only you, but people that are hurting throughout our city and our country and the world. And so as you are sort of looking at 2021 and trying to figure out what the year looks like, I know for some of you it's New Year's resolutions, all of that. This is sort of an invitation to you. What does it look like for you to be incredibly generous to the community and to the work that we're doing here, so that we continue to do the kind of work that we get to do? So maybe you're relatively new to us, and you're looking at 2021 and your budget and your resources, and saying, I'm going to jump in. We invite you into that. There's a link there. The part that really makes a difference is when you say, I'm in for a recurring narrative, monthly, weekly, whatever it might be. So it allows us to be able to plan really well going forward this year. Then maybe those of you who do give at a recurring level, you're saying, you know what, I want to throw in one sort of giving chunk randomly just to help infuse some of the needs that we might have. And then there's others of you that say, you know what, I can give in terms of a matching gift with my company. And so we actually have a link that should be in the queue right here that lists the organizations that will double your gift, that will match your gift to Watershed as a 501c3 organization. And so we've been able to see a lot of significant generosity happen that way. And so thank you again just for being with us this morning. Thank you for how you look at the work that we do here. Not only jump in and get your hands dirty, but you also give at a very aggressive level. We love you guys and look forward to the moments ahead.
I hate you, but I was just kidding myself. Every moment I start to replace, 'cause now they're gone, all I hear were the words that I needed to say. And you hurt under the surface, like trouble, the water running cold. Time can heal, but this won't. So before you go.
love with you. This ain't the honeymoon. We're past the infatuation phase. We're right in the thick of love. At times we get sick of love. It seems like we argue every day. I know I misbehaved and you made your mistakes, and we both still got room left to grow. And though love sometimes hurts, I still put you first, and we'll make this thing work. But I think we should take it slow. We're just ordinary people. We don't know which way to go, 'cause we're ordinary people. Maybe we should take it slow. Take it slow. This time we'll take it slow. Take it slow. This time we'll take it slow. This ain't a movie, no. Fairy tale conclusion, y'all. It gets more confusing every day. Sometimes it's heaven sent, then we head back to hell again. We kiss, then we make up on the way. I hang up, you call. We rise and we fall, and we feel like just walking away. But as our love advances, we take second chances. Though it's not a fantasy, I still want you to stay. We're just ordinary people. We don't know which way to go, 'cause we're ordinary people. Maybe we should take it slow. Take it slow. This time we'll take it slow. Take it slow. This time we'll take it slow. Take it slow. Maybe we'll live and learn. Maybe we'll crash and burn. Maybe you'll stay. Maybe you'll leave. Maybe you'll return. Maybe another fight. Maybe we won't survive. But maybe we'll grow. We never know. Baby, you and I, we're just ordinary people. We don't know which way to go, 'cause we're ordinary people. Maybe we should take it slow. Hey, yeah, yeah. We're just ordinary people. We don't know which way to go, 'cause we're ordinary people. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe we should take it slow. Take it slow. This time we'll take it slow. Take it slow. This time we'll take it slow. Take it slow. Slow. This time we'll take it slow. Take it slow. This time we'll take it slow.
If we were here together, I can't even imagine the round of applause that would be taking place right now. Hopefully you're doing like that little emoji thing in the comment section, everyone. My name is Matt, and I'm one of the co-pastors here. And it's possible that there are some of you that like Watershed is still a really new experience. Maybe you've never even been here physically. And I don't know if this is helpful in hearing, but this series that we're engaging in this January and February actually is like 15 years old. There's been several iterations of it. It's been our attempt to have a conversation with the city around something that's really important in terms of sex and relationships. And as a matter of fact, the graphic that you're seeing are banners for one of the iterations that we've used called Stogies and Stilettos. A couple of years ago, we found that to be a little bit too limiting in terms of its binary nature. And of course, this year it's love in a time of COVID. And one of the things that's been, I really haven't known what to do with, is that every year during this series, there's a weekend designated to talk about sex and sexuality. And for 15 years, for some reason, that's always defaulted to me. So this morning, here I am again after 15 years to talk about sex. And usually I'm like really walking into this space with a bit of fear and trepidation, and that still resides. But as Cedric was leaving this morning, and just after following Tyler, I really think that sex might be the only topic that would hold your attention moving forward. It's just, I don't even know how I follow what has been taking place. Cedric walked out and I fist bumped and I said, thanks. Thanks for like the bar that I have to try to leap across. But here's kind of how I want to get started this morning. I want to invite you to put your hands out in front of you. Yeah, I know you're in front of your computer, and you're going to need to kind of comment at times, especially if you're Tina Sagisi, because you're obsessively commenting, and we love it for the record. But I want to invite you to put your hands out, and then I want to invite you to close one of your fists, really tight-fisted, and I want you to hold that position throughout the course of this morning at various times. I'll let you kind of dictate when that needs to happen, but the way that I want to launch into this is by examining just a brief soundbite / passage from Genesis 12, where Moses is describing this moment when God calls the father of Israel into his role as being the father. And he says to Abraham, who is Abram at the time, he says, listen, I want you to leave your country, I want you to leave your people, and I want you to leave your father's household. And then he describes to him why he's asking him to do this. That he's going to multiply his family in a land that he's going to take them to. And through this multiplication process, through the spreading of his, quote, seed and the expansion of his family, this will become a nation through which God will bless the world. Pretty tall order, wouldn't you agree? And somehow in the story, Abraham, he hears maybe this inner voice, or maybe it's as loud as a lightning bolt in the sky, but he chooses to leave. And says that he picks up his nephew Lot. He invites his nephew Lot. He grabs his wife Sarah, and it says that they take with them all of the possessions and all of the people that they have accumulated. Now, it's interesting. Yeah, right there it is. And they're leaving this place called Haran. So out of Haran, takes his nephew, his wife, and all of these possessions that they had accumulated. Now, what is interesting about all of this, I think, is in verse 1, it talks about his country, his people, and his family. This is his Haran. His country, his region, really is like the political landscape. It's the way that an entire region understands to have governed itself. Even in a primitive form, in an ancient world, there's a bit of structure that he is saying goodbye to. He says goodbye to his people, which is really his tribe, which means he's saying goodbye to his tradition, his customs, and his family. He's leaving behind his relational support system. All three of these ecosystems, I think we could agree, are what shaped Abraham's view of how the world was supposed to work. All three created a degree of certainty and security up to this point. And so you can imagine how much fear and insecurity he was having to work through to try to let go of what used to be and move towards what could be. And by the way, this was a revolutionary idea in the ancient world. It was very rare for families or individuals to pick up and move beyond their Harans. Why am I mentioning this? What does this have to do with sex? Well, I think when it comes to understanding our sexual self, when it comes to making sense of the transitions that we've moved through or are moving through from childhood to adolescence to young adulthood to adulthood. In many ways, that transition is like a journey out of Haran. It's what happens when you move past the ecosystems that have shaped you from your past or even your present. Much like Abraham, I think in the process of leaving Haran, there are particular possessions that we have accumulated, ideas, beliefs, systems, and structures that we've held on to with a death grip. And part of what I've liked to do this morning is try to name some of the things that it's possible you're still gripping, either because they've been in your past or maybe because they are in your present. And what I'd like to do is to, over the course of this morning, as we name these things, to invite you to begin to loosen your grip, with the hopes that maybe by the close of today, our hands are wide open for something deeply divine, deeply Christocentric. So here's the first thing that I think we might all be tight-fisted or clenched over. And again, this may be something in your past, or this may be something in your present. Here's the first thing that I think we might be clenched over, and it's the idea of all or nothing. All or nothing. If you're like me, you grew up in a Christian tradition, an expression. And by the way, like, I know a lot of you come here because you're trying to make sense of that past, so that's one of the reasons I think this part is really important. But you were probably, in your hand, you were handed the idea that anything in terms of your sex life outside of a committed relationship within heterosexual normativity, sex outside of marriage between a man and a woman is deplorable to God. That's how you get God's wrath thrust upon you. That's how his love gets removed. That's how blessing gets removed from your life. And that's the quickest way to get yourself in a place of being judged or condemned or ejected from your community. And within this same religious ecosystem, it's possible that there was a particular type of masculinity that was assigned to boys and a particular type of femininity that was solely reserved for girls. An ecosystem where, and this isn't a comprehensive list, but this is just for instance, an ecosystem where boys were taught you have to be emotionally tough. Yeah, I know you're sad. I know that hurt. Just rub some dirt in it, stuff it down and move on. Don't cry. Be a leader. Be a conqueror. Be a protector. You're G.I. Joe. You're Rambo. You're Arnold Schwarzenegger. And if you're a girl, on the other hand, you're to be soft-spoken. You're to be gentle. You're to be a helper. You're to be submissive to those men in your life, whether that's a husband, a dad, a spiritual leader, an authority figure in the world, your brothers. And I want to be real important. I want to be really clear because I think it's important to say that, like, any of those qualities, none of those qualities are bad per se, right? Like to be emotionally strong, to step into situations and lead, to be able to charge the hill, to be soft-spoken, to be gentle, to be helpful. None of that is wrong. In fact, when we do conversations about the Enneagram, like, those are different divine attributes. But the problem has been that when your path is so narrow in helping you understand who you are becoming, that creates all kinds of problems. And then if you overlay on to this narrow path, some sort of an experience where, like, the way that you are attracted to other people isn't falling within the heteronormativity that you were handed. Or if you're struggling with understanding who you are in terms of gender, then all of a sudden there is all sorts of problems that can begin to surface. If you were a boy, you were probably taught, or it's possible that you were taught that boys place a higher value on sex in relationships than women. I was taught that, not just as a young person, but as a pastor, and that women was more bent relationally. If you were a girl, it's possible that you were experienced a ton of attention being placed on your body. Like that you were supposed to cover up certain parts of your body. That you were supposed to maintain a posture of modesty in order to manage the sexual overdrive of men. Which just hearing myself say that as a dad of a daughter makes me want to throw up in my mouth. That somehow the women of this world are supposed to be in charge of the way men govern themselves is not just irrational, it's almost criminal. You were to do this to keep your brothers from stumbling. If you were sexually curious or adventurous, and you were a boy, you were a stud. But if you were that way as a female, there was another word for you. If you explored your own body, if you experimented in trying to understand yourself, and some of that understanding involved pleasuring yourself, again, punishment, suffering, wrath of God, condemnation. In this ecosystem, losing your virginity was the cardinal sin. You had, quote, lost your purity. You had dishonored or cheated on your future husband or your wife. And it's possible that you were compared, and women were compared this way more than men, for the record. But you were compared to often a piece of used gum, a dirty slipper, an apple that had too many bites taken out of it, a trampled rose. There's a book that my friend Tracy sent me last year called Pure, Inside the Evangelical Movement That Shamed a Generation of Young Women and How I Broke Free. And I've only scratched the surface in what I've just said in areas that this book comprehensively covers. But simply put, in the all or nothing ecosystem, your body is your enemy, your body is dirty, and sex is bad and dangerous. That's the undertow, that's the message that was sent. And simply put, the greater danger in all of this isn't the kilt or the prescription that was handed to you. The real danger was imparting spiritual ideas about sex through a binary lens, through all or nothing thinking. Either you're all in with these beliefs, either you're all in with the behaviors, or at least presenting that you're all in, or you're out, right? Either you verbalize and publicly present yourself as being in allegiance, or God's going to hate you, you're going to hell, wrath is going to be poured out. For many of us, this was the starting point for how we oriented and how we organized our bodies. This is the thing that we were holding in our fists on our way out of Haran. All or nothing. I think there's something else, though, that we were tight-fisted with. And this is probably no surprise, but it's the idea of fear. Right? When you're backed into a corner of all or nothing thinking, and then all of a sudden the way you're thinking about something, the way your desires are flowing, no longer works in that ecosystem, the fear of losing validation, the fear of the loss of comfort and security and certainty, or relationship, it can be terrifying. When the road that you've been given is so narrow, and you're 16 or 23 or 40 or 40 and starting over, and your body and your mind ends up places that you can no longer be transparent about, how much do you start to cut parts of yourself off in the interior space? How much hiding do you do? How much pretending? How much double life posturing do you have to take on, and how much stress? And so there's all or nothing thinking, there's fear. And then this next one, I'm going to have to spend a few minutes on, because this is pretty, I think, entrenched, but it's the idea of confusion. And this is, I went through this, I've been going through this for the last probably 25 years, but it's confusing when you're told there are specific consequences of stepping outside the all or nothing ecosystems of your past, and then you watch other people, either privately or publicly, step out of bounds, and the lightning from heaven doesn't fall. Like, this is not to say that like suffering and disappointment and setbacks don't take place. But not always. In fact, sometimes you're perplexed because the people that are taking the risk of doing this actually seem really free. They actually seem as though they're more fulfilled outside of the all or nothing as opposed to inside of all or nothing. And not to mention that sometimes there's people that like have done it, quote, the right way, but then their relationships are in shambles as well. Or maybe that's your story. That has been some of your stories. Like there's been times where someone has arrived here at Watershed and said, I did it the right way. I did it in my Christian school, the way my Christian school told me, my youth group, my university. And 5 years in, it was a train wreck. Confusion. Or you're confused because in the past you were told that people who oriented outside of heteronormativity were reaping wrath onto themselves. And then you run across people like my friends Jonathan and Blair, who really early on, there's a picture of them, really early on here at Watershed, they showed up as partners. They've been together for 5 years. And you didn't have to be around these two guys very long at all without being struck by how much joy they found together, how hard they worked on the relationship. And I can just remember, and I've been honest with them about this, like because at that time Watershed was still being held, or still held a tight grip to the all or nothing way of seeing the world, I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop and feeling guilty about how much joy I was finding when I was around them and with them. So it was like this deeply confusing situation of, well, it should like be left in ruins, but it doesn't seem to be that way. And then as they began to grow in their relationship and fall deeper in love, they got married, and then the next thing you know, like they're this family. And you can't look at a family like this. You can't look at Jonathan and Blair with their boys, just like you can't look at the numerous families here at Watershed and go, this is nothing other than just beautiful. To see those guys together with their kids, it's the opposite of destruction. In fact, it's normalcy. It's a family in relationship, and there's undeniable beauty. But that was a process of coming through tons of confusion. And then it's confusing when you realize that 50% of the divorce rate inside the church is right around 50%, which is about what it is outside of the church. You would think that if the church really had their hands wrapped around this, that would be different. It's confusing when you're told it's wrong to explore your body and as such, but then like fire doesn't rain down from heaven. And as a matter of fact, you begin to understand scientifically that that's kind of part of a process of growing up in a home where you have nurturing, loving parents. Like that's actually a healthy way for a child and a young adult to begin to understand themselves. None of this is to say that sex isn't risky. The choices that we make with our bodies matter. We'll talk about that in just a minute. The Bible isn't helpful in this. The Bible is a narrative that's drenched in patriarchy because patriarchy was an invisible force when the Bible was written. The Bible's authors are mostly men. Its heroes, its main characters are largely men who often through the spoils of war participated in the most savage of sexual acts, whether that be slavery or rape, who lavished themselves with women and concubines. The Bible's also confusing because the majority of theological voice since it was written has been men. Like 99% of it, not just men, by the way, white Eurocentric men. The theologians that are quoted the most are white Eurocentric theologians. And it's because of the work of people like Miguel de la Torre that is actually visited here, who is saying, look, until we begin to learn how to read the scriptures from the margins versus the center of power and privilege, that we're never really going to get a full perspective of what the divine has been trying to call us forward to in his text. There's a great book two great books that I've read in preparation for this. One's called The Birth of Pleasure by Carol Gilligan, and The Racial Contract by Charles W. Mills. And both of these books do a phenomenal job helping rewind the tapes, so to speak, and give a really clear historical view about how we got to where we are in some of these conversations. Especially the racial contract goes at nauseam, goes at length at talking about the connection between white colonization and the obsession over bodies that are black and brown, and the commitment to somehow creating civility in all of it. And I don't want to I don't want to be too much of a spoiler alert, but one of the conclusions that gets drawn is that whatever it is that we were handed growing up had less to do with some sort of divine voice and more to do with the need to maintain some sort of privilege and power and control seen through the lens of white supremacy. This is a part of what we hold in our hands. It's confusing. And for some, you might ask, well, what about Jesus? Surely Jesus has something to say in all of this. Well, sort of. I mean, he doesn't speak directly into our situations today. Remember, he was a part of a country, a people, and a family. And within his context, he did have a pretty clarifying statement around a question about divorce, but it was an entrapment question that was trying to get him to say the wrong thing so that they could murder him. And what we do see in Jesus is the unrelenting commitment to stand with women, the unrelenting commitment to stand in solidarity and be in community with the sex workers of his day, and a robust spirit of really calling out the all or nothing people. All or nothing, fear, confusion. And then finally, and this one I think is sort of the culminating point, secrecy and shame. Man, when you're backed into a corner and there's fear and there's confusion, like all of a sudden, you don't feel the freedom to be yourself. In his book, Beyond Shame, Matthias Roberts writes, with all the attention shame has gotten in the past decade, it doesn't take a shame expert to draw connections between sex, sexuality, and shame. We know it deeply in our bodies. He goes on to write, even for people who grew up in more sex-positive homes than mine, or who have done incredible amounts of work around their sexuality and sex lives, the connection is hard to escape. Wherever there is sex, there seems to be shame. We haven't even leaned into the experiences that some of us have had around the trauma, the abuse, the exploitation that we might have experienced throughout our lives. Something physical. Can I invite you right now? And I don't know how tight your fist might be, right? Like in working through this morning's conversation, there's a couple of times like I thought my fingers were going to fall off because maybe this isn't your current reality, but if it was your past reality, we know that shame and trauma get stored in our body. But can I invite you to begin to open your hand just a little bit? And it's okay, like you're safe to do that right now. In this community, you're really safe. Can I invite you to open your hands? What could we put in our hands? What could we put that would allow us to begin to believe again that at the deepest place of ourselves, we are held together by something bigger than ourselves, that God does love us. Here's the first thing, and this isn't like rocket science, but the first thing that I think we should put in our hands in reaction to all or nothing, which is a destination, it is a point of arrival, I think we should place in our hands the idea of maturity. That your sex life, your understanding of your identity is not, there's no finish line to understanding that. there's only the invitation to continue to evolve, to grow. If you had told me at age 25 that at 55 I would still be trying to understand myself sexually, I would have just scoffed at you. I would have said, why? By the time I'm 55, I probably will have already been married for a couple of decades. I will have been having sex like every night. That would have been my 25-year-old response, right? Usually when I'm in front of a crowd, that would get a laugh. And if it didn't get a laugh, if there was silence, there would be awkward silence. I have no idea if you thought that was funny. I thought it was hysterical. I'm moving right along. But the point being that at 25, it was all about prohibition, right? It was about like making sure that I crossed the right finish line. Then it was like fair game. It was like, oh, let the party begin. And we say this all the time, that if who you are at 35 is the same person you were at 25, then like that should be concerning. There should be some sense of growth, some sense of development. There should be an effort to pay attention to what's going on in your body as you mature, and your circumstances are going to change, right? And so how you understand that change and what the implications around how you understand yourself sexually and your identity, that's not a bad thing. It's actually a really normal thing. And can we begin to look at it through an understanding of maturity? And a maturity that allows us to fully embrace what God longs for us to have. Ideas that begin the conversation of self-worth around God's love and deep acceptance versus some tight-fisted version of religion or spirituality that we're having. By the way, and this might be worth mentioning, my experience has been that immaturity is present as you're trying to understand this when your view of growth or your view of freedom is without limitations. Do you know what I mean by that? Usually that means I'm going to make decisions based on how I feel at any given moment. And again, take what you need and discard the rest. But at 55, the worst decisions of my wife. Right now, there is my wife is rolling her eyes behind her screen about all of this, first of all. But the worst decisions of my life in relationships have been when I have caved to emotions in the moment. My emotions, without some sort of structure, are the most untrustworthy ways of informing decisions, which leads me to being into this next thing. What are your values? Can we put the idea of values in our hands? How are you making decisions about what's important to you with your body, with your relationships, with your heart, with your soul? Do you have a strong value around consent? I know that is stating the obvious, but in this day and age, you can't take anything for granted, right? What is the process of you becoming really clear on your boundaries about what it means to love yourself, about what it means to be healthy and loving towards others? And then how are you creating uber clarity around that so that not only you function within a healthy decision-making structure, but you also communicate that in relationships as you engage and encounter one another. And so maturity and values. And then this last one is generosity. When it comes to, not the last one, the next one rather. When it comes to generosity or when it comes to shame and trauma, it's really easy for us to kick into some sort of self-loathing or judgment of others. Unprocessed pain is always projected. Shame that isn't transformed will eventually be transmitted. It'll either go inward, where we will try to destroy ourselves, or we'll need to find a scapegoat outside of ourselves so that as we blame others, we feel better about ourselves. And so can we begin to be generous with each other? Can we move forward in a posture of being self-forgiving and also others forgiving. We can still function in a ecosystem where accountability and consequences are in place for things like abuse and exploitation and violence. Like, that's still really, really important. But in terms of how you take care of yourself, can we trust that what we see in Jesus, in the way that he approaches those people who are beating themselves up or who are a part of being shamed or who have made really poor choices, it seems like the robust amount of patience and love and compassion that he expresses is beyond anything that people have seen within human history. It's why he's so captivating. It's why people are drawn to Jesus, drawn to Christ. And we see him exemplifying scandalous amounts of grace. No more, the most robust expression of that being the cross, right? Like God entering into the human experience on a cross is this message that I don't care what has happened, I'm willing to meet humanity at its lowest point. I'm going to be in solidarity with those who are suffering under the greatest of injustices, even if some of those injustices or some of that suffering is self-imposed. I am there. And I'm not trying to get my mind changed about you. No, I'm trying to get your mind changed about me. And I would argue your mind changed about yourself. You're going to make mistakes. Growth is going to look different for everyone. In fact, as we hold generosity in our hand, can we begin to acknowledge that we're not all going to have the same epiphanies about the same things through the same experiences at the same time in the same stages of life? So it'll be messy. If it's going to get messy, we have to match that messiness with an appropriate degree, beyond matching that with an appropriate degree of generosity. And to the extent that we can do this, be loving and patient and kind, there's a radical type of love that begins to be born as we practice this with each other and with ourselves. I think that's why the last thing that we get to hold in our hands is good news. This is good news. What if we became the sort of community that began to help each other pry one another's hands open? No, it's okay. It's okay. I know this is terrifying. We've all been there. So can we help? No, it's okay. You can open your hands. There's something more life-giving worth placing in your hands. Something deeply loving, transformative. And can we allow that to be how we show up in the world? Could we become the sort of community that could awaken and struggle so that together we could love as though a different world is possible today? That sounds like loving our neighbors as ourselves. That sounds like loving God with all of our heart, mind, and soul. And in a world that could really use some good news right now. That sounds like good news. And it's not just good news for the all or nothing ecosystems. That's good news for everyone. If it's not good news for everyone, it's just really not good news. So Watershed, what a week. What a year. If there's ever a time I wish we were together, it's this morning. Actually, I say that every weekend, but may we be a community that awakes. May we struggle well. May we love well. And may we be a community of good news for each other and for the world. I love you and I miss you. Have a great Sunday.